And it is that while the lethality of their power is greater than ever, their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control 1 million people. Literally, it was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people.
The smoke in the air of our Concord bridges and Pearl Harbors is always smelled first by the farmers who come from their simple homes to find the fire and fight.
If you embark on instituting a society where government protects you from yourself, you're in big trouble, and that's what they're doing. That's all government is force. I mean, do you have a choice about paying Medicare taxes? This government uses force to mold behavior or mold the economy. They've overstepped the bounds, and they violated the whole concept of our revolution and our Constitution.
Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Freedom Link here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. I'm Joe Joseph, and tonight I'm being joined by my lovely wife, Angie, who is going to help me out tonight, too, with this all this stuff going on, especially with these troops and these troop movements everywhere, you know, and exercises going on. I want to start the broadcast out, though, with a Facebook post by one of my one of the followers to the Freedom Link. And it goes on to say, this is at 1:45, this is a post by Bill Green, and he goes and he says, Ron Paul entered the room of the Republican National Convention with a lei given by the Hawaii delegation. The crowd erupted into chants for President Paul. Fox News' Megyn Kelly cut her segment short because she could not hear over the chants from the presidential contender. They're now chanting, let him speak. We were marginalized and overlooked and underestimated for too long. We responded by taking over conventions at the state level, organizing the greatest grassroots network since the American Revolution, and spreading a message that would change the tone of the GOP. It's been 15 minutes and the chants have not stopped. I've never been so proud to be part of something in my life. And that was by RNC delegate Andrew Dellinger. It's pretty heavy, isn't it, honey? Yes, unmute. That would be good.
Yes, it is.
Well, you know, it goes on to say, you know, when he talks about the grassroots movement, it harkens me back to an article written a while ago by Charlie Reese. This was in the 90s. And he was a columnist for the Orlando Sentinel. And I've read this article before, but I think it's really prevalent or prudent in this time that I read it again. And that's called the 545 versus the 300 million people. And it goes on to say, politicians are the only people in the world who create problems and then campaign against them. Have you ever wondered if both the Democrats and Republicans are against deficits? Well, why do we have deficits? Have you ever wondered if all the politicians are against inflation and high taxes? Well, why do we have high inflation and high taxes? You and I don't propose a federal budget. The president does. You and I don't have the constitutional authority to vote on appropriations. The House of Representatives does. You and I don't write the tax code. Congress does. You and I don't set fiscal policy. Congress does. You and I don't control monetary policy. The Federal Reserve Bank does. 100 senators, 435 congressmen, 1 president, and 9 Supreme Court justices equates to 545 human beings out of the 300 million are directly, legally, morally, and individually responsible for the domestic problems that plague this country. I excluded the members of the Federal Reserve Board because that problem was created by Congress. In 1913, Congress delegated its constitutional duty to provide a sound currency to a federally chartered but private central bank. I exclude all the special interest and lobbyists for a sound reason. They have no legal authority. They have no ability to coerce a senator, a congressman, or a president to do one cotton-picking thing. I don't care if they offer a politician $1 million in cash. The politician has the power to accept it or reject it. No matter what the lobbyist promises, it is the legislator's responsibility to determine how he or she votes. Those 545 human beings spend much of their time and energy convincing you that what they did is not their fault. They cooperate in this common con, regardless of party. What separates a politician from a normal human being is an excessive amount of gall. No normal human being would have the gall of a speaker who stood up and criticized the president for creating deficits. The president can all he can do is propose a budget. He can't force the Congress to accept it. The Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, gives sole responsibility to the House of Representatives for originating and approving appropriations and taxes. Who's the Speaker of the House? John Boehner. He's the leader of the majority party. He and fellow House members, not the president, he can only approve any budget they want. If the president vetoes it, they can pass it over as veto if they agree. It seems inconceivable to me that the nation of 300 million can't replace 545 people who stand convicted by present facts of incompetence and irresponsibility. I can't think of a single domestic problem that's not traceable directly to those 545 people. When you fully grasp the plain truth that 545 people exercise the power of the federal government, then it must follow that what exists is what they want to exist.
It's kind of mind-blowing that so few people wield so much power.
That's right. If the budget is in the red, it's because they want it to be in the red. If the Army and Marines are in Iraq and Afghanistan, it's because they want them in Iraq and Afghanistan. And if they don't receive Social Security but are on an elite retirement plan not available to the people, it's because they want it that way. There are no insoluble government problems.
We should get into their pension plans sometime.
Yeah,
and all their other perks.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, it's unbelievable. Do not let these 545 people shift the blame to bureaucrats whom they hire and whose jobs they can abolish, to lobbyists whose gifts and advice they can reject, to regulators to whom they give the power to regulate and from whom they can take the power. Above all, do not let them con you into the belief that there exist disembodied mystical forces like the economy and inflation or politics that prevents them from doing what they took an oath to do. Those 545 people, and they alone, are responsible. They alone have the power. They and they alone should be held accountable by the people who are their bosses. Provided the voters have the gumption to manage their own employees. We should vote all of them out of office and clean this mess up. And that was by Charlie Reese, former columnist of the Orlando Sentinel newspaper, in a very, very fitting article, especially in today's day and age where everybody seems to point the finger at everybody else. But really, when it all comes down to it, you know, the responsibility not only rests with the 545 in Congress, but ultimately with the over 300 million Americans that vote these people back into office after all of the shenanigans have happened. It really makes me sick. Your thoughts, honey?
It's ridiculous that we allow this situation to go on and perpetuate.
Yeah. No,
they are directly responsible for the financial woes of the country. It's completely in their hands. You know, and I really enjoy when people give you the whole, well, then vote them out of office speech. I mean, the whole election process in this country is such a ridiculous debacle that it's just laughable. It really is. First of all, you have to be somebody and raise ridiculous amounts of money and have, the right people backing you and whatnot just to run a campaign, and if you don't know the right people and the right people don't, I guess, approve of your running for office, then chances are you're not going to get in. It's very rare that it happens otherwise. Very rare. And, then we have to worry about all the election fraud that goes on that's been documented, that's come out in court cases.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And, the election process, on my YouTube channel, I have the testimony of Clint Curtis, who goes into some testimony before the Florida legislature that, talks about the fact that the software in these electronic voting machines have been rigged. Bev Harris from Black Box Voting's been on the show and talks all about all of the shenanigans that have gone on, and you can watch her documentary, Hacking Democracy, on my channel. That's the Freedom Link Radio on YouTube. It's a sad state of affairs out there, folks. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about these military operations that are going on, and also this fantastic, funny little, snarky little law in Florida that deals with states of emergency. We'll be back after these. Welcome back, folks. Don't forget the email address is thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. That's thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. Thank you so much for all of your emails and important information that you do send me. And a couple of shout-outs tonight to listener Gene for sending me some great info. And then Cracker in the chat room sent me this law that you might find a little bit interesting. This is a Florida law, but it's a 2012 statute, and 870.044, automatic emergency measures. Listen to this, because if you'll remember right, the governor of Florida declared a state of emergency before the RNC took place. And what that does is it kicks this 870.044 into exists. Actually, it activates it, if you will. And it's called automatic emergency measures. Whenever the public official declares that a state of emergency exists, the following acts shall be prohibited during the period of said emergency throughout the jurisdiction. 1, the sale of or offer to sell, with or without consideration, any ammunition or gun or other firearm of any size or description.
How interesting that that's number one.
number one. Number 2.
I find that incredibly interesting.
Yes, how convenient. Number 2, the intentional display, after the emergency is declared, by or in any store or shop of any ammunition or gun or other firearm of any size or description. So, can't sell it or offer to sell it. And if you have a store, you better not display any of it. And number 3, the intentional possession in a public place of a firearm by any person except a duly authorized law enforcement officer or person in military service acting in the official performance of his or her duty.
So are there any rules that pertain to anything other than telling you that you can't do anything that's at all related to a gun? I mean, are those the only rules?
Yes, as a matter of fact, those are the only rules. You are authorized, of course, to to follow the old advice: when in wonder or in doubt, run in circles, scream and shout. So you can do that, but you better not have a gun, because you'll be thrown in the hoosegow for sure. And so yes, here is
this guy should lose his job for abuse of power.
Well, no,
I want to know who created this statute.
I don't know. The Florida Senate approved it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And so I mean, you thought, well, this just goes to show you the state of things and just how corrupt things really are. And maybe there's some good people in the Florida Senate that just don't get it. Maybe they're just duped. I don't know.
No, there's not. Not.
But they all conveniently took the same oath.
It's not just that, but they have a responsibility to be educated about what their oath means, about the history of this country and what the law of the land is all about, what it means. And they're, like I said the other night, their only job is to protect the rights guaranteed to us by our Creator. That's their only job, is to make sure that people are not infringing on one another's rights.
They're not supposed to
rule
us.
Nor is some outside party. Yes, go ahead.
They're not supposed to rule us with an iron fist? Is that right?
People get what they ask for. They get
perhaps
what they pay for.
Yeah. They say slavery ended in the 1860s, right?
Yeah.
Wrong.
I mean, they reach into your pocket and use your money to abuse you all day long and harass you all day long. I mean, you got to love it, right?
I mean, it's rampant criminality from the very top of the federal government on down, even into your state governments and your local legislatures, everything is corrupt.
Yeah, but don't whatever you do, don't go down there and, arrest anybody and, kick out the corrupted politicians. No, because we know that certain individuals within the government and within the army will consider that an act of domestic terrorism and march right in there and, promptly assassinate anybody that's trying to peacefully take their government back by lawfully arresting the criminals.
Yeah, no, I just...
Yeah, I'm going to waste my time and cast a vote, though.
And are you speaking of that scenario we talked about last broadcast about?
Yes, I am. Wouldn't you know it?
Yeah, by that Colonel fella that
Colonel yes, Klink, whatever the hell his name.
Colonel Klink. Yeah, it might as well be Colonel Klink for all we. I mean, it is kind of like reminiscent of World War II Nazi Germany. But seriously, it is. I mean,
it is. It's totally. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I can't believe
Tea Party militia.
That's the point. Who was it? I think it was Timmy that said the other night. We were sitting around talking on Skype one night, and I think it was Timmy. I'm pretty sure it was Timmy. Said, the Germans had these very conversations in the 1930s, sitting around their kitchen tables and, sitting around, shooting the breeze with their families saying, hey, we can't believe what they did today. We can't believe what they're doing, And here we are just doing the same thing with our, fingers up our noses, not doing anything about it. And really intimidated into a place where most people wouldn't do something about it even if we could, or even though we could, excuse me, Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. These military operations have been going on all over the country, these emergency operations, and they don't seem to be letting up at all. In the last 2 days alone, as a matter of fact, our man on the street in Minneapolis, Tim Watts, is actually on assignment right now.
Yes, we do. We have a correspondent on the scene. Downtown Minneapolis.
He's actually in downtown Minneapolis as we speak, getting footage of these Black Hawk helicopters that are doing
in his neck of the woods.
Yeah,
this week.
Yeah. So anyway, these Black Hawk helicopters are conducting exercises in the metro Minneapolis area, and of course, it's got some residents kind of.
Yeah.
Freaked out.
Yeah.
I mean,
Don't be alarmed.
Right. I mean, and basically what they're doing.
Black Hawk helicopters landing on hospital roofs and apartment buildings, but don't worry about it.
Right.
They're just training in an urban environment.
And InfoWars has an article: Black Hawk helicopter over Minneapolis worries residents. Black Hawk military helicopters are flying low over Minneapolis this week as part of an exercise being overseen by the U.S. Special Operations Command, SOCOM, increasing concerns that Americans are being prepared for a state of martial law. Okay, well, come on now. I mean, could we really be in for something like that? And if you go to this article at Infowars.com, there's a couple of videos of these Black Hawk helicopters actually conducting operations. They're getting so close to these high-rise buildings and complexes that, people are waking up, they got their boxers on, they're just like, and
they've scared people so bad that they've actually died of heart attacks during some of these urban training missions. There's actually been cases where people had heart attacks and died because they were horrified, and there was no information about what was going on.
That's right. No, and so anyway, you could see this, but basically, you're standing in your boxers right at your window, and there's a Black Hawk just hovering right outside your window, with some people sitting in the back with the door slit open, looking right in your window.
Yeah, sitting behind a 50 cal or what looks like a 50 cal but might not be armed. Yeah. So, at least that's what they'll tell the public.
Right, and
they lie all the time.
Despite the fact that the urban exercises have been going on since August 19th. Authorities only decided to properly inform residents after police and media outlets received calls from worried residents last night. Yeah. So, We'll get into what the police response was to this when we come back from break. Don't go away, everybody.
Your abilities are awesome and may be called upon by concentrating your thought energy with definite purpose. Just concentrate and the powers will be yours. Think clearer.
I just want to tell folks that are listening down in the Gulf region that our thoughts and prayers are with you as you guys are dealing with the brunt of Hurricane Isaac right now. So just stay safe. And the troops
that are camped out down there, too.
And we'll definitely get into that, too, because, there's troops on the streets again. Gosh darn it. Just stop.
I wonder if they're going to confiscate weapons this time.
Yeah, I don't know. But this, getting back to this thing in Minneapolis, the Minneapolis Star Tribune just did, a little post on their online site dealing with this helicopter thing. It says, it's not an invasion. Authorities are reassuring worried residents that those mysterious helicopters flying low over parts of the Twin Cities metro area are nothing menacing at all. The U.S. Special Operations Command has been conducting routine urban environment training.
And that's not menacing. No.
No. And last I checked, this wasn't supposed to occur. It's kind of illegal. In Minneapolis and St. Paul since August 19th, supported by police in both Minneapolis and St. Paul. I mean, if this is routine urban environment training for SOCOM, why are the police involved?
I want to know what kind of urban environment overseas, especially in the Middle Eastern area or maybe Africa where they're at right now. What kind of urban environment is like downtown Minneapolis? I mean, don't they have to train in areas that they're going to be in that have to be as close as possible to the real thing? They spend a lot of our tax money recreating areas to be as close as possible to an environment they're actually going to be in, so that their actual training is effective. So I want to know what kind of urban area in the Middle East or whatever place we're in right now is like downtown Minneapolis. How come they don't explain that?
I don't know. The only thing that I could think of is maybe Dubai.
Or Miami or wherever else they're doing this.
No, but I'm saying where it would be similar would be like Dubai, maybe Qatar and Oman.
And when are they ever going to be carrying out military
They're not.
aggression in Dubai?
They're not.
Please. I mean, come on. It's just never going to happen.
Exactly. But I mean, that's the only thing close in that region that I could think of that would, support any sort of remote justification for this. But it says the training, which has been conducted in locations not easily seen by the public, became more visible as of Sunday when helicopters became a part of it. Residents can expect to see or hear low-flying military transport helicopters, specifically Blackhawks and smaller Hughes 500s between 7 p.m. and midnight. Police and news outlets received several calls about the helicopters. All flights and routes have been coordinated with local authorities and the FAA. Exact training times and locations are, this is my favorite, are not being released to prevent people from gathering to attempt to watch the training and create a safety hazard.
Give me a break. It's a safety hazard that they're doing it in the first place. That's the whole fact that they're doing it is a bigger safety hazard than any other situation that the public could possibly create. It's just unbelievable. And Cracker in the chat room got it exactly right. He said they are, when I said that, they should be training in an environment that's going to be as close as possible to when they're going to be doing, carrying out these missions in. He's right. He said they are there. It's for here. It is. That's exactly right. That's what they're doing. But they just tell the public, well, they need urban environment training. And everyone's like, oh, okay, because there's cities like Minneapolis and Miami and New York all over the world, don't you know? Where we're likely to be engaged in combat.
And vets out there will know exactly what I'm saying. The philosophy that the military embraces is a simple one. It's train the way you fight, fight the way you train. If you're going to train for a certain conflict or a certain environment, you train as if you're in that environment. And the only thing I can glean from them doing these urban environment training, routine or not, in urban areas of the United States is because they're training to do actual...
Be in urban areas in the United States.
Within the United States, yes. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
The obvious.
And then let's take it a step further. Again, if this is routine urban environment training, why are they being supported by the local police? What do they have to do with military operations overseas?
That's right. And I want to know why the sheriffs in these areas aren't kicking them the hell out. They've got the authority and the responsibility to do that. They're responsible to their fellow citizens to not let this kind of crap go on. I mean, really.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But
they're not doing their jobs.
But this isn't the only place that this is going on, believe it or not. You see, because it's also happening right now in Camp Lejeune. And the Marines and civilian police officers are conducting urban training exercises there as we speak. So it's not only just going on in Minneapolis, it's also happening at Camp Lejeune. So the training at Camp Lejeune looked and felt real, and that was the point. Law officers and Marines from across the country ended their training with a bang. Thursday, this last Thursday, was the final day of exercises for law enforcement and Marines who have gone through special reaction team training at Camp Lejeune for the past 3 weeks. In the final exercise, teams were presented with a series of real-life scenarios as well as hands-on instruction to handle them correctly. Brian Dye, operations chief of I&I in Lexington, Kentucky, says training civilians as a blended force with Marine Corps personnel eases the transition into a real-world scenario.
Exactly. That's the point. That's why they shouldn't be doing this.
Quote, I think it's always good when you get an opportunity to work on some similar tactics and procedures so that everybody's kind of working and operating on the same page. That way, when you bring teams together from active duty and the civilian side, which is illegal, it makes the integration a whole lot smoother.
Yeah. So, not only are we paying for it, but, we've got to make it easy for them to, violate our rights and destroy the law of this land.
Okay. But here, listen to this. The tactics trainees take away from this course just may help save lives. Are you feeling it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling it.
You know whose lives it's going to help save? The bankers that don't want to go to prison.
That's right. This 3-week training course is phase 1 for law enforcement and Marine Corps personnel. Phase 2 will focus on sniper and designated marksmanship training. Okay. So not only do you have this stuff going on in Minneapolis with the Black Hawk helicopters, we had it recently in St. Louis. We've had it in Hartford, Connecticut, where tanks have rolled through the streets. But now we have this at Camp Lejeune, where they're talking about, I think it's always a good opportunity to work on some similar tactics and procedures so that everybody's kind of operating on the same page. They're not supposed to operate on the same page.
Yeah, I loved the interview that one of those local news channels did in one of those areas where this was going on, and there were tanks rolling up and down suburban streets, okay? I mean, they're in, suburban residential neighborhoods, right? Rolling up and down the streets, tearing up our pavement that we pay for, that you have to drive over. Unbelievable that they're getting away with that crap. Destroying taxpayer property. And they had to interview 50 people before they found 2 morons that thought it was a good thing, and obviously they were interviewing people in a lower class area who clearly were not very highly educated. And one of the guys goes, I think it's great. It's going to reduce crime rates in the area today, or whatever it was he said. And he goes, in fact, I think we should go out there and salute as they drive by. I'm like, wow, Salute.
No, absolutely.
Let's salute as they roll down our streets in tanks. Of course.
But therein again lies the problem that I see is that they act as if this is a good thing, that local law enforcement is supposed to want to and be able to operate in tandem with the U.S. military. And the fact is it's illegal to do so.
That's right.
It is illegal to do so. So why aren't more people outraged? Well, you want to know why? Because they're so dumbed down, they don't understand that that's not the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
They think it's okay.
They don't know what their own rights are, no less what's legal and not legal, and what's constitutional and what's not constitutional. It's unbelievable how successful the campaign to dumb the population down has been. And of course, that's something that if anybody wants to educate themselves about, I'd suggest you delve into some of Charlotte Iserby's work. I know that they're long reads, but blow your hair back.
That's right.
Truly.
We'll be back after these messages, folks. Don't go away. Last segment coming up. Well, with the return of a hurricane to the Gulf region and a national or a state of emergency being declared down in the Gulf region, you have to expect that there's going to be troops that are sent into the area. And Reuters is reporting that Hurricane Isaac, of course, has poured down on New Orleans, bringing high winds and soaking rains that will pose the first major test to the city's multi-billion-dollar flood protections. 7 years after Katrina devastated the U.S. Gulf Coast, hundreds of U.S. National Guard troops took up strategic positions around New Orleans, preparation meant to avoid the chaos seen in the days and weeks after Katrina in August 2005. Do you really expect that there would be the same type of chaos from 7 years ago? I mean, really? What do you think, honey?
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's typical. It's an excuse to do something illegal. That's all.
Yeah,
Same
no,
old.
That's true. Brandishing automatic assault rifles to ward off any threat of looting, the troops and military vehicles took up positions on mostly deserted streets. Their arrival came as driving rain and stiff winds battered the city's famous tourist district, the French Quarter, and its boarded-up storefronts. White-capped waves formed in Lake Pontchartrain. The Army Corps of Engineers closed for the first time the massive new floodgate on the largest storm surge barrier in the world, the Lake Bourg, east of New Orleans. And let me tell you, Katrina really didn't cause all of the devastation. You know what caused the devastation? It was the flooding. And the flooding was caused by the Army Corps of Engineers blowing the levees. That's what caused all the freaking problems. It had nothing to do, well, I mean, of course, Hurricane Katrina, of course, being the catalyst, but a lot of that stuff could have been avoided had they just not blown up the levees. And there's witness testimony on the internet and in other places where people talk about hearing explosions of the levees blown. They weren't breached. They were blown up. So, just
That's
more
what
evidence.
they say.
Just more evidence that Katrina was more of a dry run or a wet run, if you want to call it.
They had SEAL teams there out in the water, SEAL teams that do what Jesse Ventura did, and they specialize in explosives. What were they doing there? There's pictures of them there,
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, but I do know that, of course, there's a lot of hype surrounding Hurricane Isaac now because of the devastation that Hurricane Katrina caused. And all I can tell you, folks, is that I don't really foresee them pulling another Katrina in that way. I just don't. I don't see it happening. This is a Category 1 storm. It's a lot weaker, although I'll tell you this, here in North Carolina, when we get a Category 1 hurricane, it screws us up royally. It does. I mean, there's no such thing as a hurricane that just kind of goes by and nothing happens. I mean, people are without power, and there are serious.
We went through it last year.
Yeah, we went through it last year, and we were without power for like 4 days.
Yeah.
It's tough.
In August, it was hot.
When you go without power for that long, you just get to understand just how good you actually have it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, but I don't really foresee them having a replay of Katrina again, at least as far as the police state thing is concerned. Gun confiscations and things like that. I just don't see them making that that mistake again. I wonder if they thought that there was going to be as much blowback as they did and as much outrage as there was when they started doing that kind of stuff. You know, I wonder if they really anticipated that there would be. I mean, did they expect that people were just going to welcome them with open arms as like, oh, our saviors are here. Oh, here, take my shotgun. Really? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But, I mean, everybody should be following the events down in New Orleans. But more importantly,
it was an armed robbery. It wasn't a gun confiscation. It was an armed robbery, what they did down there. I mean, they went to houses where, you know, people were high and dry, you know, very, very wealthy areas, and went in there and just stole all their weapons. Nobody ever got their guns back. What would the government do with the guns, you know? Sell them? You know.
Right, but don't get distracted so much to the point where you're not paying attention to these other exercises that are underway, because it's like I said earlier, you know, train the way you fight the way you train, and they are operating in urban areas in conjunction with local police because they are training for an ultimate scenario where they are going to have to cooperate with local police.
Right.
That's the only reason why they do it. It has nothing to do with going overseas. They're not doing this to cooperate with local police overseas. They're doing this to cooperate with local police here.
Right. Exactly. I mean, just look at what they're doing. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. You know? What do you think they're doing it for?
That's a good question.
You know, there isn't local police overseas.
No. There's not
our local police.
That's right. That's right. So I don't exactly know. You know, of course, we don't know what kind of timetables there are or anything like that. But I'll tell you this, that the economy is certainly not doing well. There's a lot of anti-government sentiment being harbored by a lot of Americans out there, and it's growing. And, of course, you know, the Republican National Committee is trying to placate them by throwing things into the Republican platform that will sate them to, you know, calm them down. Hey, look, we're putting this in our platform. Well, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Okay, they're words on a piece of paper, you know, but real actions are what define whether or not you're serious about what you say, like a return to the gold standard. Really? You're going to return us to the gold standard?
There's not enough gold on the planet.
That's right.
To deal with our ridiculously corrupted, inflated, fake money, monopoly money system.
That's right. And to quote Wayne and Garth from Wayne's World, yeah, and butts might fly out my monkey.
Right.
Seriously, because it is, we're going to return to the gold standard. How about rejecting Agenda 21? That's in the Republican platform. I mean, do you see? We are making inroads to the point where these people have to address this. Doesn't mean that they're serious about addressing it, but they have to put it in their talking points because they see that there's such an uproar about this. So they're trying.
You know what this reminds me of?
What's that?
I don't mean to interrupt you, honey. You know I'm terrible with that, but this reminds me of the scene in Gangs from New York when Tammany said to Bill the Butcher that the appearance of the law must always be upheld, especially while it's being broken.
Yeah, exactly right.
You know?
Yeah, hardy, har, har.
Right.
But that's exactly right. So, I mean, that's what they're doing. They're putting these things into the, quote, platform to just make you feel all warm and fuzzy. But really, they're nothing more than talking points and nothing more than the empty promises that have been given time and time and time and time again to the voters of this country to get you to vote or to compromise your values for what? And that's why you just cannot compromise. That's why I can't. If you choose to vote, vote your heart and use your head. And don't just say, well, I think I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils. Because it's still evil, even if it's lesser.
And, I know a lot of people don't have particular feelings about spiritual beliefs, but if you ask me, if you cast a vote for the lesser of two evils, it makes you morally culpable for all of the wrongs that individual does in office.
Yeah, you're almost complicit.
Right.
I mean, think you're an accessory to the crime. You put them there. And not to mention the fact, if voting actually changed things, they'd have made it illegal by now.
Right.
So I mean, it does not change a damn thing. And the electoral process in this country has been hijacked in every way, shape, and form imaginable. And they will stop at nothing to get their agenda through and across. And it's evident by what they're doing with these military exercises. It's evident by the exposure of all of these voter fraud cases, of the work of alternative media in exposing the rampant voter fraud, both with the Diebold voting machines and within these elections commissions.
Yep.
It's amazing. Everybody remembers
this year's presidential election votes are being counted where, dear?
Istanbul?
Spain.
That's right. Yeah, I can't. I know it's overseas.
They're being counted in Spain.
Yes. So just so you know, I mean well.
What do you think George Washington would have said about that?
Well, he'd say, "Wow, look at Spain's unemployment rate sits now at about 26%. So we're helping them out by putting a couple of people.
Isn't that nice?
Look, we're looking out for our brothers and sisters in Spain, baby. You guys go ahead, count our votes." I mean, it's unbelievable. I can't believe it. Well, folks, hour number 1 is done. Hour number 2 is on the way. When we come back, I'm going to be talking about the Department of Homeland Security releasing biological agents in Boston subway system. We'll go through a history of unethical human experimentation in the United States, and we'll also get into the economy. And there's so much.
And it is that while the lethality of their power is greater than ever, their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control 1 million people. Literally, it was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people.
The smoke in the air of our Concord bridges and Pearl Harbors is always smelled first by the farmers who come from their simple homes to find the fire and fight.
But if you embark on instituting a society where government protects you from yourself, you're in big trouble, and that's what they're doing. That's all government is force. I mean, do you have a choice about paying Medicare taxes? This government uses force to mold behavior or mold the economy. They've overstepped the bounds, and they violated the whole concept of our revolution and our Constitution.
It's hour number 2 of the Freedom Link here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. I'm Joe Joseph, along with my wife, Angie Joseph. We're talking about Big Sis begins releasing biological agents into Boston subway. Yes, but of course they assure public safety, despite governmental history of dangerous biological testing on the American public. Surprised, honey?
It's just love. It's more love.
Yes, InfoWars reports that the Department of Homeland Security will begin releasing a dead bacteria into the Boston subway tomorrow in an operation it says will test sensors designed to detect biological agents that can be reported or be released as part of a terrorist attack. Little is known about what exactly the bacteria consists of, and the DHS has not been very forthcoming with information, saying only that it is a non-infectious material that's been approved as a food supplement. That says a lot, doesn't it? Boston Globe reports the test will begin Wednesday and will be held periodically over the next year at the Harvard and Porter Square stations in Cambridge and the Davis Square station in Somerville. Quote, a rapid alert from a detection system can locate and identify these materials and provide for immediate and appropriate response to protect people and contain the hazard. Is that really what it's for? Yeah, my thing is...
And they've never lied about, the danger of some of the crap that they've tested on the public before, right? They've never lied about how dangerous it really is or what it really does. They've never done that before, right?
So what are you saying is, are you saying that the government or people within the government would test stuff on us? Is that what you're saying?
Dangerous biological agents? No.
Oh, my. Well, let me, let's see here. We got a BBC article from 2006. Hidden History of U.S. Germ Testing. 50 years ago, American scientists were in a frantic race to counter what they saw as the Soviet threat for germ warfare. Biological pathogens they developed were tested on volunteers from a pacifist church and were also released in public places. In the 1950s, the Seventh-day Adventist Church struck an extraordinary deal with the U.S. Army. It would provide test subjects for experiments on biological weapons at the Fort Detrick Research Center near D.C. The volunteers were conscientious objectors who agreed to be infected with debilitating pathogens. In return, they were exempted from frontline warfare. What a bargain.
Yeah, really.
Fort Detrick was working on weapons it could use in an offensive capacity, as well as ways of defending its troops and its citizens. Hotel Anthrax uses declassified documents, evidence from Senate investigations, and personal testimony to trace the American bioweapon program during this period. So the research involved anthrax and other lethal bacteria and biological poisons. And the scientists also conducted tests on an unsuspecting American public. Rabbit fever. There's one. More than 2,000 volunteers, nicknamed the Whitecoats, passed through Fort Detrick between 1954 and 1973, where they worked as lab technicians, as well as offering up their bodies for science. One Whitecoat, George Shores, tells of how he was infected with tularemia, or rabbit fever. A giant metal sphere, known as the 8-ball, because of its resemblance to a snooker ball, was used in the experiment. Technicians exploded prototype bioweapons inside the structure. Quote, they had like telephone booths all the way around the outside of the 8-ball, and you went into the telephone booth and shut the door and put a mask on like a gas mask. It was hooked up to the material that was inside the 8-ball, and you breathed it in. He began to feel ill before too long. Even my gums hurt. I don't know that I've ever been so sick in all of my life. First it started as a headache and achy feelings, and it just kept progressing. I just wanted to breathe enough to keep alive. I would just take little gasps of breath, and I would hold it for as long as I could because it hurt so bad. I can imagine if someone was using that agent in the battlefield, the soldier would just have to lie down. He would not be able to function. The Whitecoat volunteers were not infected with the most lethal microbes. Their role was to test the effectiveness of new vaccines and antibiotics, and as soon as they became ill, they were given medical treatment. Within a few days, George Shores began to recover. But American Institute of Medicine is conducting a study of more than 6,000 veterans who say their health has been compromised by secret tests in the Cold War years. Some of these were veteran sailors who were involved in tests known as SHAD, Shipborne Hazard and Defense, which involved spraying lethal chemicals such as sarin and nerve gases in the open sea. The BBC program makers also obtained declassified documents prepared by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, which refer to a study of nearly 100 SHAD veterans who have since died. It found the veterans were 3 times more likely to have developed one of the group of killer diseases as a sample group in the general population. It concludes, quote, this study does suggest that veterans who participated in Project SHAD may be at increased risk for cerebrovascular and respiratory diseases. Then, of course, we have a subway experiment, but it wasn't just Whitecoat volunteers and sailors who were subjected to experiments. Scientists used what they thought was harmless stimulant in major bioweapon tests across U.S. cities and on public transport. It was a bacteria which they believed was harmless, but which would mimic the dispersal of deadly biological agents such as anthrax. Does this sound familiar, folks? Does this not just sound like what we were talking about in Boston with these, this dead bacteria that they're going to just spray?
Oh, it's food grade,
Yeah, food grade, yes. You can eat
it. Food grade. What does that mean? They're going to be putting biological agents on our food again?
Yeah, and
Is that what they mean by food grade? Meaning
that's right.
Plan to feed it to you?
Yeah, you're going to feed it all right. You're going to eat it. One way or another, you eating it, baby.
Have some on your Subway sandwich while you sit in the subway full of biological gaseous viruses.
Yeah, and it says, but later research showed the strain of Bacillus globigi, or BG, did pose a risk to people who were ill or whose immune system was failing. The program hears from a retired scientist whose job in 1966 was to drop light bulbs carrying BG on the New York subway. He would then measure how the simulant might spread in the event of a real attack using a motorized vacuum device concealed inside his suitcase. Wally Painier, 82, recalls, "We just dropped light bulbs with the powdered simulant inside. I think it spread pretty good because you have a natural aerosol developed every few minutes from every train that went past."
Unbelievable.
Yeah, in 1994, the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs conducted what it described as a comprehensive analysis stretching back 50 years of the extent to which veterans were exposed to potentially dangerous substances without knowledge or consent. Guess who it was chaired by? John D. Rockefeller.
Oh, what a surprise.
Or J. Rockefeller, yes.
I'm sorry, isn't there something in the Geneva Conventions that says that governments can't do this thing, this biological testing without the consent of the public? Am I crazy? Or
the public would consent to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah, we'll take it.
I mean, as is evidenced by the story you read a little while ago about the volunteer Adventists, I guess there are some people that would say, sure, load me up, baby.
Yeah, sure, if there's some sort
give
of
me some of that love.
Yeah, give me a little bit of love, that little bacteria, you know what I'm saying? Oh, no, it's like yogurt, really. It helps the digestive system. Baloney. We'll be right back after these messages, folks, so don't go away. We'll talk more about this. We'll also get into the economy when we come back. Welcome back, folks. Don't forget that Down the Rabbit Hole with Popeye airs every Wednesday and Friday from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time here on the Orion Talk Radio Network, and again on Sunday from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern. Boy, he's got some great guests lined up over the next 30 days. You guys will be really interested to or really tune into his broadcast and listen to some of that stuff. I mean, amazing information that he gets put out there on Down the Rabbit Hole. And we're talking about the biological warfare testing, pathogens, disease being tested on the American public. It's happened for a very, very long time. And we can look back in history and go as far back of, say 1880 or so. And I'm going to go through a list of these because I think it's very, very important that people have a historical reference when you start talking about this, because your first inclination when you first hear this is to blow it off. Like, no way, man. How could they get away with something like that? But when you look at history, you'll find out that they've been doing this the whole time.
Right.
So anyway, in the 1880s, in Hawaii, a California physician working at a hospital for lepers injected 12 young girls under the age of 12 with syphilis, just to see what happens. In 1895, the New York pediatrician Henry Hyman intentionally infected 2 idiots or mentally disturbed or disabled boys, one 4-year-old and one 16-year-old with gonorrhea as part of a medical experiment. A review of the medical literature of the late 19th and early 20th century found that there were more than 40 reports of experimental infections with gonorrheal culture. including some where gonorrheal organisms were applied to the eyes of sick children. In 1900, U.S. Army doctors in the Philippines infected 5 prisoners with bubonic plague and induced beriberi in 29 prisoners. 4 of the test subjects died as a result. In 1906, Professor Richard Strong of Harvard University intentionally infected 24 Filipino prisoners with cholera, which have somehow become contaminated with plague. He did this without the consent of the patients and without informing them of what he was doing. All of the subjects became sick and 13 died. In 1908, 3 Philadelphia researchers infected dozens of children with tuberculin at the St. Vincent House Orphanage in Philadelphia, causing permanent blindness in some of the children and painful lesions and inflammation of the eyes in many of the others. In the study, they refer to the children as, quote, material used. Do you see how inhuman they are?
These people are monsters. They're monsters. It's unbelievable. The things that it's just unconscionable. You know, to do some of this stuff to children and, you know, people that are unsuspecting. One of my favorites is in 1914, Joseph Goldberger restricted prisoner diets to induce pellagra, which is a terrible disease, which he suspected were caused by vitamin deficiencies, not infectious diseases, as was believed at the time. He was nominated for the Nobel Prize for his work.
Yeah, I mean, how unbelievably just...
What an honorable thing that Nobel Prize is, isn't it?
And, you know, one of the,
Obama, this guy, I mean, these are some really righteous people.
One of the most heinous ones that I've seen was the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. And that was a clinical study conducted for 40 years, from 1932 to 1972 in Tuskegee, Alabama, by the U.S. Public Health Service. In the experiment, 400 impoverished black males who had syphilis were offered treatment by the researchers who did not tell the test subjects that they had syphilis and did not give them treatment for the disease. By 1947, penicillin became available as treatment, but those running the study prevented study participants from receiving treatment elsewhere, lying to them about their true condition so that they could observe the effects of syphilis on the human body. By the end of the study in 1972, only 74 of the test subjects were alive. 28 of the original 399 men had died of syphilis. 100 were dead of related complications. 40 of their wives had been infected, and 19 of their children were born with congenital syphilis. The study was not shut down until 1972, when its existence was leaked to the press, forcing the researchers to stop in the face of public outcry. And they probably would be continuing up until this day if that didn't happen.
Right. By the way, has anybody ever done some investigation into syphilis or what they call a syphilitic brain, which happens when syphilis goes untreated in the body for a long time? It's unbelievable. And some of the worst human beings in history were found later to have had syphilitic brains. I can't remember what the exact name of the disorder is, but apparently it just – I saw a picture of a syphilitic brain, and it's unbelievable. It's completely and thoroughly diseased and rotted, and the people go insane. They lose their minds. Hitler had a syphilitic brain. They think Stalin had a syphilitic brain, you know, and going all the way back into, you know, history from a long time ago. Some of these crazy kings and rulers and dictators were found later to have had syphilitic brains.
Well, that's right.
Horrible disease.
No, it is. But I mean, this goes on, and we could get into all the different tests. How about MK Ultra? You know, MK Ultra activities continued until 1973, when CIA Director Richard Helms, fearing that they would be exposed to the public, ordered the project terminated and all the files destroyed. And for anybody that doesn't know about MK Ultra, I mean, you know, you could look at the latest Colorado shooting and say, wow, you know, were some of the techniques from MK Ultra employed on this individual here? Is that what this guy was? I mean, this is all stuff that was tested on the public.
Yep.
It's unbelievable. One of the main components of MKUltra was LSD.
Yes. Yep.
Who knew?
That made people jump out of windows and all kinds of crazy stuff.
It's amazing.
Yep.
From 1988 to 2008, the number of overseas clinical trials for drugs intended for American consumption increased by 2,000% to approximately 6,500 trials. The trials are often conducted in areas with large numbers of poor and illiterate people who grant their consent by signing an X or making a thumbprint on a form. See, these people, for money and power, will resort at nothing to make sure their little toys work, I guess you could say. And they go to these places. You know, the United States isn't the only place. The third world country, I mean, they are just like stickpin. They're just little pin cushions for these doctors and these sick scientists. And, you know, with no regard for humanity, where's the humanity in these people?
There is none. That's the problem. This is what we're up against. You know, some of the people up in the upper echelons of society and of academia and politics are some of the most inhumane, despicable creatures to ever walk the planet. And they're in charge of things. They're in charge of a lot of things.
You know, most of them are eugenicists.
Exactly. And I also want to make a point that, you know, if you think you haven't been tested on without your permission or without your knowledge or consent, think about chemtrails. That's chemical warfare going on all the time.
Yeah, we'll get into some of these.
Chemtrails, the barium, the aluminum, it's extremely toxic, and it's bioaccumulating in the food, soil, water, in, you know, wildlife. It's unbelievable. It's a crime against the planet.
It's a crime indeed. We'll be back after these messages, folks, so don't go away. More about eugenicists, these eugenicists doing these experiments, and the economy when we come back. Don't forget, folks, you can catch some of the new program. The lineup's changing here at the Orion Talk Radio Network, and from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern, Monday to Friday, we have the Unsolicited Opinion with Maggie. Following her, we've got The Sound of Freedom with Ryan Brooks. Two great new shows for your listening pleasure here at the Orion Talk Radio Network. So make sure you tune into those shows as well. While you're working, while you're playing, making dinner, doesn't matter. Tune in today. So we're talking about eugenics and just some of the things that they've done. You know, immigration restrictions. That's an easy way to do it. Also, how they class unfit and fit individuals. You know, by the use of intelligence testing and everything else, they decide who's fit and who's unfit. You know, how about compulsory sterilization? Or euthanasia programs. Better baby contests. There's all sorts of stuff. A lot of influence from World War II Germany. You know?
A lot,
gotta make sure. Blonde hair and blue eyes, master race. So, I mean...
that's where we're headed. You know, if you want to know what the future's going to look like, just take a peek back at, you know, Nazi Germany's some of their programs.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, I mean, this is just all stuff. When you hear this, you should know the history that, yeah, look, has the government done this in the past? Yes. Have they said that, oh, yeah, it's a dead bacteria, no problem, nothing to see here? Only to come to find out that, yeah, there was something to see, that people were getting sick and people were dying from it. So understand that this has happened many times in our nation's history, and that Well,
why would anybody ever trust them? You know, when they say that this is it poses little to no risk to, public health and it's safe and why on earth would we trust these people? They consistently lie about these very things.
Absolutely. They most certainly do. They consistently lie. And that's why I don't trust any story or any account that comes from these talking heads and bureaucrats. I just don't. And, there's another story here about this, these vets that supposedly had a plot to take over the government and kill Obama.
Yes.
I mean, really? Are you serious?
They spent, $87,000? Where the hell did they get that kind of money?
Yeah, where'd they get that kind of money? I mean, seriously, that's crazy. 4 Army soldiers based in southeast Georgia killed a former comrade and his girlfriend to protect an anarchist militia group. They formed that stockpiled assault weapons and plotted a range of anti-government attacks. Yeah, these 4 Army soldiers.
I'm going to follow this trial. In fact, I'm going to commit to follow that trial for these gentlemen. At least what we can get. Some of them are still active duty, so we won't get to see their trials, I'm sure. But I'm going to follow and periodically update on this trial because I want to hear their side of this story. I'm interested to hear from their attorneys.
It's interesting. The prosecutor said that the group called itself Fear, forever enduring, always ready. Do you hear that? I mean, this is crazy. 4 individuals, even if it's 20 individuals, really? You think that they're stupid enough to think, hey, you know what? We'll be able to do this. We'll be able to carry this out.
Exactly.
I mean, look, they're in the military. They know how things work.
Right.
I'm sorry. This is just a bunch of BS.
And, of course, they were going to assassinate Barack Obama.
Barack Obama, yes.
Yes, that was on their list of things to do.
Yeah, okay. That's great. I mean, just such bunk. Yeah. And you're right. Okay, so where'd they get $87,000 to buy guns and bomb components?
Exactly.
Yeah, what are these generals in the military? Because NCOs don't get paid that much.
It's really not as easy as they would have you to believe to purchase bomb components without flagging somebody.
Exactly. Okay.
Come on.
So, this is just bunk. It's crap. But, this is all part of the game, folks. This is all part of the plan. Let's demonize gun owners. Let's demonize veterans.
Yeah,
because
there
veterans
seems to be a campaign like I've never seen before to really demonize not just veterans, but military members in general. To demonize them as anti-American and anarchist and
it's very troubling.
Yes, it is. It is troubling.
No, it's very troubling because veterans know more than anybody how to fight the power, fight this power. They know the workings of the military. They understand how things operate. And really, in times of civil unrest or, of the breakdown of society, the veterans are going to be the ones that are going to be putting up the stiffest type of resistance.
Yeah, exactly. Or martial law scenario. Guess who's going to be the guys out organizing people's neighborhoods to protect their perimeters? And, guess who's going to be helping to do that kind of stuff? They know this. They're not stupid. That's why they're demonizing veterans and military members that, voice any sort of political views of their own. They're supposed to be autonomous robots, I suppose, and just say yes, sir, and do what they're told and not think.
So anyway,
I don't mean to be so sarcastic. I just, it's
no, but
sickening.
But this is an all-out attack.
Right.
That's what this is, and unfortunately, we're at a point now in our history where we've got this training going on, this urban assault training. We've got the demonization of veterans and of gun owners, Second Amendment. If you embrace the Constitution, you're an extremist. There's a lexicon that the DHS put out a while back, domestic extremism lexicon that they put out to help identify all the varieties of domestic extremism.
Yeah.
And that's, like it'll go into anarchist extremism, animal rights extremism, any abortion, and it lays it all out for everybody in a nice, convenient 12-page manual.
Yes, where they will proceed to use your taxpayers to train their police to look for things like Ron Paul bumper stickers.
That's right, because, these Ron Paul supporters.
Got to get them dangerous Ron Paul people.
Yep. So, this demonization campaign, this should send red flags up. When you look at that in conjunction with urban assault training happening in all our metro areas.
You should play that Pentagon clip where they're training some of the guys in the Pentagon talking about what was it? No, it wasn't in the Pentagon. It was some sort of like local law enforcement training, wasn't it? Anyway, where the instructor saying, "Can anyone tell me who the first terrorists in America were?" And there's the guys raising their hands, the founding fathers. That's right. Yes, that's right. That's the correct answer. That's who they were. They were terrorists.
They were terrorists. Right. Yeah. they were terrorists. We're all terrorists.
Yes.
Anybody that loves freedom.
Freedom is a terrorist.
Yeah, we're all terrorists.
Yes.
Well, if that's the case, I guess I am. Because I'm sorry. Things have gotten way out of control. And the establishment knows that people are getting pissed, and they're preparing for it.
The common folk are getting angry.
My only concern is, what are they preparing for? Because all of this stuff, this isn't going to just go into, economy collapses and civil unrest ensues. I just don't see it. There's going to be something else, some catalyst. That's the only thing I can kind of speculate on. Something will trigger it. I just don't know what it is.
Right, the Hegelian dialectic. That's how they operate.
Yeah, because all this preparation is very, very, very concerning. And not to mention, again, all of the it's been a constant assault on our constitutional rights.
Yes, we as a humanity are in a state of emergency. And what's the mainstream media talking about? The Queen wore a hoodie today.
Yes, the Queen wore a hoodie.
Yeah.
Great. Well, folks, last segment of the broadcast coming up. We'll talk economy. And then we'll ride off into the sunset. This is the Freedom Link on the Orion Talk Radio. Welcome back, folks. It's the last segment of the broadcast. And if you like what's going on, you're going to like what's coming up in the weeks and months ahead with Orion Talk Radio, because the lineups are going to get even better and the service is greatly improved. Our new call system should be in place here by the end of next month, and boy, oh boy, when that happens, it'll be crazy when I can take phone calls. That will be the day, because I've never been one to really take phone calls, so that'll be a new experience for me.
We were talking about setting up a whistleblower line too, right?
Yep. There's setting up a whistleblower line, or there's just so many things in the works here. It'll be really cool. And the economy, when we were talking about all this preparation, why are they getting ready for supposed civil unrest or whatever? Well, the Wall Street Journal, or the ETF Daily News, actually came out with a little blog post today. Market shock coming this fall, UK Telegraph sources. So Dominique de Kevliak de Balalala says, I think we're heading for a market shock in September and October that will match anything we have ever seen before. An unnamed source at a major European bank told the UK Telegraph on Friday. With the fear of yet more war, especially with Iran, and a likely spark for World War III, Liquidity trapped central bankers, political squabbling within German and between Eurozone members over the fate of the euro, solid evidence of a global economic catastrophe lurking, and a nasty U.S. presidential election between two grotesque candidates nearing any hope of consumer spending or capital formation to come to the aid of an insolvent banking system has already been thoroughly discounted in the price of the banking stocks. And, of course, it was a smart money skipping town during the 2-year-long phony rebound, leaving the inevitable Act 2 of despair to the retail investors and captured institutionals as the usual bag holders. A more severe crash than the one triggered by the collapse of Lehman Brothers could be on the way, according to Telegraph journalists Harry Wilson and Phil Aldrich. Contrary to the paid cheerleaders of the U.S. economy, no one is in the mood to commit to anything productive or able to consume the products during the most tumultuous times since the Great Depression, leaving the middleman, the banks, with nothing to do. The problem is a shortage of liquidity. That is what's causing the problem with the banks. It feels exactly as it felt in 2008. See, these are people on the inside that are actually saying, look, folks, there's a problem here. And, of course, most of us all know it. The economy, it's all a farce. It's all fake. And it's all going to come down, crashing down. But the Soroses of the world, they've been pulling their money out. They've been doing it for a couple of years now. I'm sure everybody's seen articles here and there of Soros pulling out of this and Buffett pulling out of that and everything else. And I'm telling you, they know what's coming. They know what's coming. They see the writing on the wall, and they've looted and they've plundered everything out of this failed system, and now it's getting ready to crash. And so they pulled all their money out, and they've bought all sorts of tangible assets like land. How about the bush plantation down in Ecuador or whatever?
Well, what we're seeing is a intentional and dramatic reduction in America's living standard. I mean, just under the 4 years since Barack's been in office, American wealth has declined. According to the Federal Reserve, American wealth has declined 40%. 40%. Imagine another 4 years in office. You know, we're going to be akin to a third world nation if it keeps going the way it's been going.
Yep.
We're headed there fast.
But that's the plan.
The rest of the world, of course, won't be very sympathetic because we've got a better living standard than, you know, most anywhere else. But that's what's going on. It's an intentional situation. It's being done on purpose. And,
yes, it is.
You know, if that doesn't inspire people to want to do something about it and, you know, take some control of your future and the future of your progeny, then I don't know what would.
You know, I don't either. Economic Collapse blog has an article that says, according to the study that Centier Research has just released, median household income in the United States was sitting at $55,470,000 back in January of 2000. In December 2007, when the recession began, it was sitting at $54,916. In 2009, when the recession ended, it was sitting at $53,508. And today, it's sitting at $50,964. It's going back, and it's going back fast. Mm-hmm. But is everything getting cheaper? No, of course not. It's becoming a lot more expensive. And it goes on to say the fact that median household income in the U.S. is now 4.8% lower than it was when the last recession ended is incredibly disturbing, especially since all of the things that we buy on a regular basis just keep going up in price. Food, gas, electricity, car insurance, and health insurance all cost a whole lot more today than they did back in the year 2000. And yet median household income has dropped 8.1% since then. So what does it all mean? It means that American families are getting poorer. And that's what's happening. So not only are we getting paid less, but things are costing a lot more. And how can you have a recovery when that happens? I don't feel it. Do you feel it, honey?
No, it's a lie. There is no recovery going on.
But how do you lie about that? See, that's the thing. This is where I don't.
All right, I'm going to tell you why they're doing this. Because technically they're not lying. There is a recovery going on. There has been a recovery going on for their bankster buddies on Wall Street and sitting in their palaces. They've had a tremendous recovery on our dime.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, how are people duped into believing that there is a recovery when you get paid less and things cost more? How do you figure that there's a recovery? How do you go to the grocery store and have this feeling of a recovery being underway when your grocery bill damn near bankrupts you? You know, when a jar of peanut butter costs $8 now. Really?
Yeah,
$8?
I don't think that many Americans believe there's a recovery going on. I think, everybody's painfully aware that there's indeed not a recovery going on for the majority of people in this country. It's just not happening. It's not going to happen as long as, we allow these individuals to continue to control the destiny of this country. They're driving it into a ditch on purpose.
It's unbelievable. And the final story of the night is one that I found it's very interesting. On the Drum, animal rights groups calls for the shooting times and the field to be classed alongside pornography. So the hunting magazine, Shooting Times, and the field, animal rights groups want them classified as porn. That's right. Country life magazines, including Shooting Times and The Field, are facing calls to be relegated to the top shelf, a spot traditionally reserved for porn magazines by Britain's largest animal rights charity. In their Gunning for Children, How the Gun Lobby Recruits Young Blood report, Animal Aid claim that titles depicting country sport amount to shooting porn, which could have a corrosive effect on children who glimpsed it.
Oh, my God, they might start to believe that they're free.
I know. Animal Aid Director Andrew Tyler said, quote, "Children who kill animals for sport in urban areas are considered dysfunctional and a social menace. Jeez. Yet Britain has a gun lobby composed of well-connected groups that devote considerable resources towards encouraging children to take up guns at a young age." I don't know. I don't see what the problem is so far. Outside of the fact that they want to take like a hunting magazine and classify it as porn. I mean, really?
They're going to start putting brown paper covers on them too, I guess. Right,
but it's okay to have vibrator commercials on TV on Nickelodeon from Trojan. But that's okay. But no, they don't want to see this hunting magazine. No, sir.
Right. Well, they have to cause moral degeneration in order for people to surrender their rights.
So they're saying,
go ahead.
Well, they're saying that at a young age, this could adversely affect a child or, cause dysfunction. But seeing a vibrator commercial after SpongeBob doesn't? Are you serious?
How does that scripture and well-known expression go? They will call good evil and evil good. Is that right?
They're doing a damn good job of it. Mm-hmm. Well, folks, it's the end of the broadcast. Boy, how time flies. Don't forget, the next edition of the Freedom Link airs on Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Of course, tonight or tomorrow night at the same time, you can catch Down the Rabbit Hole with Popeye. And catch all the other great programming here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Shows like Morning Brew, 12 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Followed by John Stokes, 1 to 3 p.m. And then Tom Donahue, 3 to 5. And then the night lineup begins. Folks, we'll see you on Thursday. Have a great evening.